Well, you're probably getting ready for your big electric bills because they're going to be coming. It's about to get hot. And there's a couple of ways that you can help that. One is with insulation, and one is with duct repair. And today we're going to talk mostly about insulation when we come back. I had a viewer send me a note a few weeks ago and asked me why I don't like rock wool insulation. I guess I made a comment along the line somewhere about that I don't. And it's true, I don't. And I don't because of what it's made from and because of all the years I've been remodeling and having to deal with old houses that have it. Breathing it is pretty nasty. And let me tell you a little bit of what it's comprised of. It's made from basalt rock, which is, I don't know what that is, and I don't know if I said it right. It's basalt, so I'm calling it basalt. You can correct me if you feel compelled to do so. And recycled slag. And recycled slag is a byproduct of the steel and copper industry. It's basically where they take all the little cutoffs and the little slaggy stuff and they grind it all up to where it makes these little fibers, and they stick it in with all of the other fibrous material, and it comes in big giant blocks, or the old stuff came in paper, but it was only maybe 2.5, 3 inches thick, as opposed to what we have now, which is of course 14 inches thick. And so the problem with it is that it floats. And if you have a leaky attic, let's say your attic door, I know a lot of times I walk in a house and I'll walk down a hallway where the attic access is, and I can smell the attic air. Like if you're in your house and you smell attic air, that's because attic air is leaking into or being pulled into the main part of the house, sometimes from your air conditioner. But a lot of times those old doors that are the pull down stairs, or a lot of houses still have scuttle holes. We call them scuttle holes. It's a little piece of plywood that you push up and you get up on a ladder, you climb through to get into your attic. We call that a scuttle hole. They leak air like crazy into the house. So if you have an attic full of rock wool insulation, guess what's getting pulled into your house? The best thing to do with rock wool, particularly if you're going to re-insulate your attic, is to vacuum it out. We have a video here, not a video, but an image of that very thing going on. This is these guys get in with these giant vacuums and they actually suck it out and they get it out of there. And that is absolutely the only way to deal with it. Just get rid of it before you put the new stuff down. Now, if you have a house that was built prior to 1990, 1995, if you have a house that's 30 years old or older, you need to go in and check the insulation and check the ductwork in your attic, particularly if you're getting really high energy bills, if you have a lot of dust everywhere, if you smell attic air or stale air in your house, that's generally an indicator that you have some duct leakage, or you have something like that. Maybe that attic, that pull down stair that has a ladder on it, that old creaky, dangerous thing is hanging down on one corner. That's real common. You know, the little springs that hold them up don't hold them forever. They get weak. They start kind of hanging down. They get warped. That thing needs to be replaced. Now, we did a video. I put a video up, and I'm going to put a new video up about some attic stairs that I found at the Sunbelt Builder Show that I really like, and just sort of the new way they're doing them now to put up a sealed unit up there instead of the old timey, which was just basically a piece of plywood with a ladder on it. So let's talk a little bit about insulation. So if you're considering insulating your attic, there are many other products other than rock wool. And down here in Texas, I don't know of anybody that uses rock wool. They might, there might be somebody that does, and there may be some old guys that still like it. I don't know who they are. But I wanted to make that statement because if you live in an older home, particularly if it was built in the 30s or 40s, it's very likely, if it hasn't been insulated or re-insulated, that it's got rock wool in it. And so make sure and get it out of there if you can. Okay, so here's some things to consider if you're going to do blown-in insulation in your attic. So most of the time now we're going in and we're blowing insulation in because we can put a thick blanket that would be 14, 15 inches, 20 inches if we want, and we can just blow it and put this big, beautiful blanket of insulation in, and it really, really affects the performance of the house. So the air conditioning will hold, it'll hold heat, it'll hold cool, and it won't leak as much air through it. And the key to insulation is the fluffiness, actually. The air needs to get in between those fibers. It needs to be controlled that way. So the fluffier, the better. It's sort of like having a down blanket on you in the wintertime if it's really cold outside and it's a big fluffy down blanket. It actually will keep you warmer. It's the same thing with the insulation, same concept. So there's a few rules if you're going to go down the route of adding inches and inches of insulation to your attic. If you have a overhang on your house, and typically around here they're only around 12 inches, and you look up and you'll see soffit vents or eave vents, and that's how air is. It's designed to let air up into your attic, circulate through your attic, and get the hot air out. And down here we're fighting the heat. Our winters are mild, but the summers are brutal. So we want the heat to get out so that everything in the attic performs better and the house is more comfortable. If you're going to add layers and layers of blowing in insulation, you need to allow the air from the outside to still circulate through your attic. And that would mean that there needs to be a little piece. Now, these are tips I'm giving you to talk to your insulation company about, or your contractor, before they change your insulation. This is a major change in your house when you do this. And so several things need to be thought out. One is called a baffle, and it allows air to come straight through up into the area above the new insulation. So if you're adding 10 inches of insulation, you need to put a 12-inch baffle and allow that air to get up there and circulate. And so the baffles go down into the eave, they come up, they help the air circulate above the new insulation. We need to check for proper venting and plumbing and dryer vents. Now I've been in houses, particularly the older houses, where the dryer vents and the bathroom vents just dump up in the attic. And that's horrible. That's a really not good thing. And so before you start adding insulation, you need to have somebody go through your attic and make sure that things are vented properly, vented to the eaves, vented to the roof. The bathroom vents, a lot of times will go up to a roof vent and just kind of blow out it, and that's fine. Sometimes they'll go over into an eave and they'll dump out of an eave. That's fine too. We just don't want them trapping or sending a bunch of moist air up into your attic, because it'll get trapped and create mold and other kind of problems. And so we want to check and make sure all those vents are done properly. We also want to check. Now, I was in a house recently in an attic, where somebody had taken a dryer vent and just let it blow up in the attic. That's something that we've quit doing in the 80s, when we figured out dryer lint from your clothes has a very, very low flash point. And so even a little bit of static electricity can cause that to flash. You do not want that collecting under your house or in your attic. So make sure that that's all addressed before they start adding insulation. Also, a biggie is if you have recessed cans and if you haven't changed them to the new LEDs, which use a lot less heat, then if you have an older can, you need to put a box over it that guards it from having the insulation cover it. If it does cover it, the little sensor inside that light will make that light go off and on because it's not getting air and controlling the heat inside that can. And so there's all kinds of little things. Now, most of this with a good insulation company is standard procedure, and they'll go over it with you. But a lot of people kind of aren't really acting like they should. In other words, there's a lot of people that are working off the books. This is a real typical thing in all of our construction industry in general. But they'll kind of work off the books, and they'll work for a whole lot cheaper, but they're not always abiding by these kind of basic rules that you need to know. I have a lot of people when I'm looking at houses, and they'll say, hey, my lights are flickering, or my lights are cutting on and off, and it's almost always has to do with the insulation in the attic if it's not electrical. So make sure and go through that process. There's a super important part of this, which is making sure that your attic is properly ventilated. And there's a formula, and I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to have to read it. The attic square footage divided by 4. So if you have 200 square feet, divide it by 4, you have 50 square feet or square inches of exhaust. And so the typical attic vent that goes in your roof, a little pancake vent, will be 12 by 12. And so you can calculate the amount of square inches of ventilation you need for your attic. A lot of times a roofer will do that. A lot of times they don't. This is a big problem I have found over the years when proper venting is not done when they put a new roof on a house, and then we've created this really untenable environment underneath the roof. It's real simple. The amount of air going out has to equal the amount of air coming in. You've got to be able to have an equal amount coming in, equal amount going out. It's pretty simple. This controls heat gain. It controls moisture control or moisture buildup. There's a lot of reasons for this. Now, your roofer also, and maybe your insulator, might recommend doing a power ventilator or power roof vent. I really am not a fan of them. And I know I've gotten in some trouble with some people, roofers in particular. Hey man, they're solar, they're great, they never quit working. Well, they do quit working. And anything that's motorized is going to quit working eventually. And so if you have passive ventilation is always preferred, always. And we have all sorts they even have all kinds of new roof vents now that are pretty good looking, but ridge vents are good. Lower vents are good. And so I'm not a fan at all of any sort of mechanical ventilation. And I also have this argument with my AC guys sometimes when they're talking about bringing outside air in. The problem I have with it is that when that stuff goes out, if the motor goes out and it quits venting, you don't know as a homeowner. You don't know until you have a problem. So my recommendation is that you use passive ventilation so you just don't ever have to worry about it again. And it could be a whirly-bird, but it doesn't have to be. You can use what's called a static vent, which is it just looks like a little square on your roof. They work fine. So remember that when that's being recommended, challenge them on it and make sure that they're making the best decision for you. Now, another thing that you need to do if you're going to insulate your attic is you need to make sure before they get in there and blow the insulation that you do duct leakage test. According to the EPA, there is a 30 to 40% air loss on average for forced air. And forced air is simply your air conditioning, and it's forcing the air into your home. And the main thing that makes it efficient is that the ducts are tight and they're not leaking air. All of as much air as possible is actually going where it's intended to go. And I'll tell you, a lot of times we find ductwork has been damaged or cut, or it has been stepped on, or it's just simply disconnected up in the attic. I go into attics all the time. Over the years, I can't tell you how many I've been in where I'll find a piece of duct laying there blowing cold air into the attic. And so if I go into your attic in July or August and it's cooler than your living room, we know that we've got a problem with that. So checking your ductwork is really, really important to make sure that this whole system works correctly. So let's go over the system real quick. The system is passive air ventilation, adequate insulation, and air duct leakage. These are the things that are going to help you get that bill down. Now, I did this on my house, and I added 14 inches of insulation. I changed the ductwork, some of the ductwork. I upgraded some of it. I was able to completely remove an entire zone, in other words, an entire air conditioning system out of my house, because my house all of a sudden was that much more insulated, and the ductwork and the system was running a lot more efficient. That meant that from the day that was finished, my next bill my next electric bill was 40% cheaper than the previous month. It was substantial. And so this stuff really has an immediate impact on your budget. So those are my tips today. And make sure and contact me with any comments, any questions. I'd be happy to make recommendations if you need me to on reputable AC people. I hope you have a great week. Until next week, this is Alex Guthrie signing off.